In this knife talk video, we're going to be talking about the Benchmade Griptilian. Specifically, this one is the updated or premium version with G10 and 20cv, but also in general, just the whole Griptilian line. And the Griptilian line is one of, if not the flagship model line for Benchmade. They have lots of different versions. Mainly, there's the Mini, which is a little bit smaller. I think it's about a 3-inch blade, slightly under. And then the full size, which this is, it's about a 3.5-inch, slightly under 3.5-inch blade. So two nice sizes for everyday carry. I like both. The small is comfortable and everything. It's not too small. And if you live somewhere where there's a 3-inch blade law, which I guess some places are, that's good for that. There's not that law here, so you know I like this larger version. But the small version is very capable also. And then they have the Sheepsfoot blade, which this is. They have a drop point, which has a thumb stud, and then they have a Tonto blade, which also has a thumb stud. I've had, I think, all three different blade shapes at some points. The drop point's a really classic blade shape. Nothing wrong with it or anything. Very going to be useful for you know, your normal cutting tasks. But I think that the saber grind is a little bit less thin on that than it is on the Sheepsfoot, and I definitely prefer the opening hole over the thumb stud. But the Tonto blade shape that they have on both the large and or the full size and the mini Griptilian is a really nice blade shape. I wish I had one right now to kind of compare this to, but you can look it up. I think for, you know, just my taste, that's a really nice looking kind of rendition of the Tonto blade shape. And also it makes for a really good utility knife because you can use the, you know, where the two edges come together to open boxes and cut tape and things like that. But the Sheepsfoot blade is really nice also for a few reasons. First of all, it has a good amount of straight edge here and then a nice sweeping belly. It's not too much of a curve to where it's, you know, you can't really use it very well. But, you know, enough belly that you can do some rocking cuts and things like that. But unlike some Sheepsfoot blades, it still has a good tip. So you're going to be able to pierce things or, you know, get into small places and things like that. Nice kind of hump there so that, you know, if you really choke up, you can kind of feel where the tip is. You can use these for skinning and hunting and things like that. I've used, not this one, but another Griptilian for that. And I have friends who do that, both hunters, fishers, military, police. I've known lots of different people in kind of all walks of life who've used Griptilians, whether it be this blade shape or either of the others. All good blade shapes and everything like that. But one of the, I guess the thing that really wins out on the Sheepsfoot blade shape for me is the opening hole. So I guess when Benchmade first put an opening hole in one of their knives, and I think it was a Griptilian, but I'm not sure on that, Spyderco had a problem with it for, you know, obvious reasons. They do have a trademark on the opening hole and everything, and they're direct competitors. So, you know, there was some consternation there, but they came to an agreement, and, you know, we don't really know what the agreement was, but basically Benchmade still uses the opening hole on this Sheepsfoot Griptilian. And it really adds to it, I think. I mean, thumb studs are fine. I have knives with thumb studs, and I think that they work okay usually. Nothing wrong with them. I just prefer an opening hole. I think you can really, you know, get a purchase on it. You can feel where the, you know, blade is and open it really easily with that opening hole. So that's what kind of wins out the Sheepsfoot blade for me of the Griptilian blade shapes. But I would like to have a mini Tonto blade Griptilian, so might be getting one of those at some point. But it's a nice knife, and another thing here being that it has the Benchmade axis lock, which I think that the patent expired on that, but definitely is sometime soon if it hasn't. So we'll see if we see lots of other or any other American-made knives with an axis type lock. But another way you can open this knife is by pulling down on the lock and just swinging it out. Now, I think probably in like New York City and places that would get you in trouble, but you know, nobody really cares. It doesn't make it come out any faster or anything like that. Just kind of a fun way to open and close. The axis lock, you pull it down and that unlocks it. Then it's spring pressure that holds it closed, and once you open it, if you're not familiar with an axis lock, the spring pushes the bar up onto the tang of the knife, so the stop pin holds the blade from going backwards, and then this bar keeps the blade from going forwards. So that's what locks it. They call them omega springs. It's like a kind of like a twirly spring. Now, I actually think that the axis lock is less reliable than a lot of other locks, in that those springs, although they don't break very often, I haven't had one break. I have had friends who had them break. And I think that of knife locks, those springs are one of the more small and fragile components. So I would definitely say that a backlock is more secure and less likely to, a well-made backlock, like same level of price and manufacturing and everything, is more reliable than the axis lock. Now, I don't think it's a huge concern, but and it's like not going to make me not carry this knife. I definitely don't think that an axis lock knife is any safer in normal use. And I actually, my friend's knife who had an axis lock spring break, only one of them broke, and it would actually still engage. So it was like kind of wonky and sideways, but it would still actually lock the blade. So I'm not saying at all, you know, some Benchmade people who really love Benchmade will probably be upset about me saying it's less reliable. So I'm not saying at all that the axis lock is not a safe lock or that it's not reliable enough or anything like that. Just I think by design, by the components, even it's going to be, I think, less reliable than the Spyderco cage ball bearing lock, or just the ball bearing lock, because rather than a bar with those kind of twirly springs, I don't really know what the name for those are, the cage ball bearing lock, or the Spyderco ball bearing lock, uses a plunger with a coil spring. And I don't know if this is based on any real physics or not, but I just feel like those coil springs are less likely to break than these, whatever the name for the twirly axis, or I'm sorry, omega spring is what they call that. I feel like the omega spring is a little bit more likely to break than a coil spring. But either way, it's a good lock. It's one, very easy to use and very fun to use. Like I say, you can flip it out, you can flip it closed, real easy. This one is really smooth, so it drops closed. So a fun lock to have on a pocket knife, and definitely a useful enough lock, safe enough. No problems there. Just I think probably slightly less reliable than a lot of other locks, like a frame lock or a liner lock, or back lock made at the same kind of level of manufacturing. But moving on from the lock and the blade. And by the way, this is 20cv steel, which is a good steel. I've used this some. This is the only knife I've had with 20cv, but I think it's kind of an analog to M390. So a pretty high-end steel. Wasn't super hard to sharpen or anything. Sharpened up relatively easily with diamond stones and, then a Spyderco double stuff, and then a strop. But should hold an edge well and everything. Moving on to the handle here, another upgrade from the normal Griptilian is that rather than the, I don't know why it's so dark right now, rather than the injected plastic that the normal Griptilian has for the handle, this is G10, so it's milled G10, and it's nicer. Now, a lot of people have like a big problem with injected plastic, like on the, Spyderco's flagship line, the Endura and Delica, and then the Griptilian. They think it feels cheap. I don't really. I think I've used knives with that really, really heavily, and they haven't broken, and I have no problem with injected plastic handles. But some people do, a lot of people do, so they wanted to put G10 on these, and it does look nicer. It definitely does look nicer. It has a more refined look than, instead of a backspacer where the two injected plastic scales just come together, this has blue G10 liners and then blue standoffs, so it does look nicer, and it'll be easier to clean out. I don't think that people talk about like ease of cleaning with these standoffs a lot. You just wash your knife out, it's not that tough, but I guess it would help with that. Has a normal Benchmade pocket clip, kind of a deep carry, works well and everything. But just a really nice knife, and I do think that this is a pretty solid upgrade over the normal Griptilian. I believe that a normal Griptilian, I haven't checked super recently, the full size is around $115, maybe like $100, and then this is like $175 or $180. And if you are the kind of person who cares about G10 over, you know, plastic and, you know, a much better steel over 154cm, 154cm is definitely like on the lower to mid-grade scale. I think that it is a little bit less higher performance than like VG10. So not like a premium steel. 154cm is a pretty mid-grade steel. Not bad at all. But this is a big upgrade. If you're someone who cares about those kinds of things on your knives, which, you know, I appreciate them, then I think it's worth it. I traded into this knife, so I didn't actually like pay for it, traded into it, but I'm happy with it. I think it's a really nice knife. And one thing that I wanted to talk about on this knife also, and kind of in comparison to some other Griptilians, I've had friends who had Griptilians that were honestly not really that well put together. They had rough opening, lock wasn't, you know, super easy to disengage and engage, and bad centering, bad grinds. This doesn't have any of that. Now, the previous owner said that he took it apart and put it back together, and I don't know how much that has to do with how nice this knife is, but this knife is really well put together. It is one of the smoothest knives I've ever felt, and that's especially true because it's not on washers like a lot of knives, or I'm sorry, it's not on ball bearings like a lot of knives are these days. It is on bronze washers. So for being on bronze washers, it is just very, very smooth. I mean, one of the smoothest knives I've felt. Opening and closing, you can see it drops closed, you know, just by the weight of the blade really, really easily. Really, like, I want to stress how smooth this knife is on opening and closing. And I was really impressed by it, especially considering the fact that it's really well centered. Now, I think that it is, I can't even say that it's maybe like a half of a millimeter, and that could just be due to the edge that I put on it, because I'm not like the world's greatest sharpener. It's about as centered as can be. And then also looking at the blade, you can see that it's really well ground. Looks, you know, pretty even on the grind, and the grind lines are pretty even also. You can see meets right there, and so does this side. So really well made knife, and just really well put together. Now, like I say, you know, maybe the previous owner was able to improve that by taking it apart and cleaning it and everything, but definitely a nice knife. And the other thing is, at no point in opening is there any play. I mean, it is just as tight as, you know, without wobble as can be. There's no play forward and back once it's locked, and even without the lock, just absolutely no wobble in the blade. And despite that, it's very, very smooth. So a really nicely made knife, really nicely put together knife, and that's kind of in the face of, over the past few years, Benchmade has had a reputation of lower quality control. But I think in the past year or so, that's kind of been reversing. You've been seeing on like forums and stuff, more reports of good quality control. So hopefully this knife is one of those and not just kind of an outlier. And hopefully Benchmade is getting back to really high levels of quality control because they have such a great warranty, and their prices, you know, with the prices, they really should have a good quality control and not come with issues. But this knife is really nice, like I say. The handle, because it's nice and simple, you know, I've talked about in other videos, I really love simple handles. Super ergonomic, some jimping, the really utilitarian blade shape, all of that put together with the, you know, pretty fun axis lock, the opening hole, I almost said spider hole, and then the high quality materials make for a really nice knife in this Benchmade 550-1 full-size Sheepsfoot Griptilian with updated or premium materials. So if you can get one of these, I think, you know, it seems like they're being made nicely. This one is, at least, and it's a great knife if you're looking for a mid to upper sized everyday carry. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like the video, and if you would like to get updates on when I post new videos, I've got lots of knife talk videos already, lots of 1-minute overviews already, but I've got lots more coming up too. So if you'd like to get notifications, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. I try to answer them if I can, if I see them, and I'm happy to see what you all have to say. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to go out and do good.